Sue sent me a beautiful mountain landscape inspired by a trip to Alaska. And what immediately struck me was how well she was seeing the shapes, the perspective, and the colors of the scene. But like many landscape paintings, there came a point where the question wasn't simply, can I paint what I see? It became, what matters most? So in this critique, we explore how light, value, and simplification can bring clarity and unity to a painting. Hi, I'm Kathleen. I help artists build the skills and structure to paint with confidence and clarity. I'm going to let you listen in on my critique with Sue now. Hey Sue, thanks for sharing your mountain landscape with us. I know you were inspired by a winding road through some beautiful foliage and mountains in Alaska recently, and your intention with this painting was to show that cool scene through the winding road and the beautiful shapes of the foliage that you saw. So let's have a look through the eyes of the elements and answer some questions that you have about completing the painting. My first impression is shapes, lots of shapes in this painting, and I can see where that was a major focus for you, trying to really see and get things correctly. I think it's well drawn. I think that you've got good perspective. You've got a good sense of foreground, middle ground, and background, and the scene is very believable. I think you've got some lovely colors. I could tell that you spent a lot of time considering different ways to make the greens and the values of those greens. I think you're seeing very well where the light is. It's definitely coming this way, isn't it? It's lighting up all these areas through here and on the mountains. Let's look at the black and white photo. Okay, so what does the black and white photo show us? Generally, it shows us the values in your painting, and this certainly does. It's giving us a good sense of the light, middle, and darker values, and I see mostly middle value. And so I do see darker value, and I think that it's very well established up here in the mountain. I think we can organize these darks in the foreground a little bit more to make that pattern of light and dark clearer in the foliage. I also think that this is your focal point. It's an obvious place for one where you've got the road leading the eye back to. It's got a very strong contrast of value. It's got a very interesting shape, hard edges, and so that's a natural area for the focal point to be. So we'll concentrate on that as we go forward. Let's look at the color balance in your painting. I think the hues are leaning towards the cooler end in general. So we've got a dominant cool painting, and you have some lovely balance of warmer hues in the yellows and then in some of those oranges. And I think I'd like to play up on those a little bit more in the painting to give it even a bit more balance. The warmer tones will also help with the direction of light, the light pattern that we want to establish a little bit more firmly in the painting. The chroma is about a mid-chroma overall. There is a very gray color on the right, the very gray neutral, and then there are some very small higher chroma bits as well. Those neutrals are good for the shadows, and I think I'd like to establish a little bit more high chroma in the light. Your mix of values is right now, it's about a 50-50. So maybe we think about changing that a little bit, either with a dominant lighter palette or dominant darker palette. We'll see how it goes. Let's get right to it. I'd like to start with something that I've been curious about since I saw this painting, and that is the sky. When I paint, I know that I can always use my ultramarine blue and white and that will give me a really great sky color. So I don't know if this is going to work, if this is the value that works, but I'm going to put it in and see how it changes the painting immediately. Now, since we are painting the background, we have an opportunity to work on some of our positive shapes here that are in the mountains. So I'm going to rework those a little bit as I go through, just not knowing what the inspiration photo looked like, but using a little bit of artistic license in getting some variation in some shapes up there that never hurt anything. Oh, oh wow. Okay. So, gosh, this immediately changes the whole thing, I think. It really is beautiful, and it picks up on a lot of these blues that are in the foreground. And I think I'd like to use a bit more of that. In fact, let's start by going right to this major part of the painting, which is the road. The road is in the light. So I think one thing we can do and clean that up nicely is we can put our high chroma color in there. And I'm using white with just a little bit of this sky color in it. It's leaning a bit pink, isn't it? Let's see if we can just get it slightly bluer. Yeah, it feels pinkish to me. The ultramarine blue does lean a little bit towards the reds, so that's kind of natural. That would happen. And when I paint a landscape and it's got the road in it, even though it's a winding, curving road, I love to give it some edginess. And this is my personal preference, that I kind of like to give it that edginess of straighter lines. And I think we take it way back here. We go into this area a little bit with it, and we make the road feel like it's going back past this focal point. See how that works? All this is just what if at this point. What if we did this? Would it work? Would it feel right? And so you're going to have to come back now positively with, say, this area that's jutting back into the road, because no road doesn't have some weeds growing on it, things like that. And so we'll take that into consideration as we refine these shapes. So I'm just going to leave that right there for now. And I really like how it immediately said, I am a road in light, and I am traveling, zigzagging through this beautiful foliage back into the mountains. Next, let's continue with the feeling of light. And I had mentioned that I liked your yellow that you used up here in this area of light. Maybe just a little bit higher chroma than what I had on there. That's nice. I'm going to see what happens if we just kind of continue running it through a little bit, and even on this side. Yeah. Oh, and look, you've already got it started up, going up into that evergreen back there. Yeah, I like that. And so while I have that color, I'm going to hit some other areas that are in the light here. The light's running across the top of the foliage there. Maybe this bit here can be a bit brighter. Remember, you don't have to use a white. Some of these colors that are naturally lower chroma right out of the tube, and that's definitely yellow. This plays nicely against that dark area here. I see what you've done here, trying to add the light coming to the tips of the evergreen. And I'm not sure if I like the yellow, but I do think maybe we try a higher chroma green that you have in here, right there, as our bright chroma catching the light. And I know sometimes light does look really glary and white when it hits things when we're outside, but I'm thinking that the addition of color here feels a bit more natural to me, actually. So I do like that. Before I continue with any more light, I'd like to get a firm sense of the shadow areas in the foreground, because that's where we said we were going to try to organize a lot of the shapes. Let's go in there, and I'm liking this blue that you had here. I think I want to try to use that a little bit more in place of this really darker neutral that you have. And I want to try to connect the line of shadow in this foreground? Where's the shadow? And I'm just imagining where, really, just in my mind, like I think the sun's hitting over this, right? So the underneath areas are going to have that darker shadow that we can use as our pattern here. Even way up into here, under here, to really emphasize that light. And I'm going to come back in with light over this, right? But I just want to establish this first. Yeah. And we've got a bit of it creeping up into the road, which is a nice play of shapes and overlapping. So I want to get back to green. So here is an evergreen right here in the middle that you've got. And I'm going to just work on it a little bit with shape. And then, you know what I'm wondering, Sue, first let's kind of get rid of a lot of that neutral in there. You could leave a little bit poking through. There. Oh, nice. Let's continue that along here. It's pretty green. Back here. Cool. Yeah. I'm wondering if we add another tree right here, because I'm not sure what's going on in that area, and I think that it could benefit from a little bit more of a shape in there. So it's going to be probably in the shadow, and it can be green, but I don't want it to be the same green as the one right next to it, so I'm going to bump it up a little bit with chroma. No, not that much. Nope. Yeah, let's just try that. Okay, so I'm adding a evergreen shape in there. Can even add some bits in here, poking through, coming behind this one. Yeah, that feels kind of cool. All right, I want to go back now to that beautiful high chroma green and add a bit of that in now. And some of that's going to be poking out in here as well, a bit more, possibly, right? We can even add a bit of it catching the light on some of these bits. Add a little along the road in the light here. Remember, anywhere you see this high chroma, it's going to feel like in the light. Maybe a little bit there. And see how this feels out of place right now because it's just so light. It's almost a white. So we can make that another color too. I'm wondering if we make that yellow. Oh, yeah, that works because it's kind of next to this purple here, which is very cool, like that. Yeah. We could have some kind of grasses by the road. Yeah, this area is starting, on the right here, is starting to feel a little bit more together. But notice how I'm not finishing it, not finishing any one area, because I always want to have the ability to come back into it and put in another color that I'm going to use down the road. Oh, here's another one of those whitish shapes. And just by giving it a higher chroma color, I might be going a little overboard with this yellow here. So let's move on to a different color. And I love this color that you used here, this kind of a red purple, and I want to pick up on that a little bit more. Even this one is so pretty. I want to get that exact color. There we go, kind of a lavender poking out in between. Here we've got some pretty wildflowers growing in this landscape, obviously. Yeah, so nice. Back over on this side, some more of those same flowers are poking out over here. Okay, all right, I don't want to get too fussy. And then I'm wondering about the mountains. They're really calling my attention back there, and they're calling my attention away from the foreground a little bit. I'm wondering if we lower the value slightly and add some bluish color. You've used a beautiful phthalo blue right there, and I want to keep that in the light here. Let's go kind of go over those areas to reinforce that beautiful blue light that you've got going on up here in the mountains. I really like that. And I want to bring a little of that down into the foreground as well. That pretty blue. Ooh, isn't that lovely? And maybe we can use a little bit of that catching the light there. but a little darker version of this, lightening up just slightly some of these real darks in here to compress the values a little bit more, because I think the lower contrast in value overall will help it feel more like a landscape. And I think such harsh contrasts sometimes we don't want in a landscape. Bring some of that blue down in here. I think we could even go lighter there, just a touch. Let's lighten it up. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe that brings it too much of a high chroma, but I kind of really like it there. Yeah. Okay. And I think I'd like to reduce the values of the mountains as well. And you know what? Landscapes are different than the still lifes. They have atmosphere in them. And so when we're looking through the painting from the foreground to the background, there's going to be more particles of water in the air. And that's going to diminish the value of the mountains, right? So these darker, these ones in the back are going to be even lighter value. So I want to simplify a little bit with this. So my eye doesn't go back here. I want to reduce the value. The chroma's fine. It's good. Your pattern of light is good, so stick with that. Just kind of seeing how it works if we make the mountains a little bluer, a little less noticeable, maybe. Yeah, kind of cool. Oh, okay. And what about this one down here? Now, since this is our center of interest right here, why don't we see what happens if we give this an all dark background here? Something to play against. I like the idea of it, but I think it's just too much of a similar, just a big blue blob back there. Maybe you continue with a little bit of this beautiful reddish color that you added as well back here to give a little bit of foil to the blue and green mountains. So let's use this color. It's like a rusty color. Yeah, it works so well there. No, not too much. What if we were there? No, okay, not too much. But I do want to simplify this a little bit, this area right in here. Look at that, you have some of that red right there. Yeah, I like that. You can even poke some holes in it. No? Yeah. Maybe this rusty color comes down a bit into the foreground as well. It looks so beautiful with this gray blue, doesn't it? So just a couple of little touches. No, that didn't work. Okay. Ah, yeah. I like it. Now I'm just playing around, adding some purple into the mountain. Nope. I'm going to go back to the blue. Yeah. I think you have some ideas to continue on and finish the painting. What have we done? We've established a brighter light pattern through the painting, increased the chroma on these areas of light. We've focused on organizing the shadows in the foreground. Sue, I hope that you have enjoyed the critique of your beautiful painting. I can't wait to see what you come up with in the end.